because I was thinking about this subject of pleasure, and we are definitely a society today that's chasing pleasure constantly, but I was sitting with it and I was like, it's really the inability to receive and actually be with pleasure.
Mm.
It's like this constant dissociative, future tripping lack of presence while in pleasure. That is a person never really being there to actually experience the pleasure that makes it more fulfilling and like a sustenance, like a resource. And so
Mm.
there's a dance in this topic of pleasure because it's not just about directing people towards pleasure, particularly sexual pleasure, but it's like how are they actually with the pleasure to for it to be fulfilling and to actually receive it
Mm.
instead of the hungry ghost and constantly chasing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brene Brown has this beautiful talk where I think it came out a couple of years ago, where she was talking about how, we're so afraid to step fully into our emotional state. We don't even give joy, which is a version of pleasure, that full 2 feet in, because we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. So we have this joyful moment, let's say, like, celebrating a little one's birthday, right? So hey, little one, here's a little thing. Look at you getting older. But at the same time, we're like, man, I still got to go to work later, or I got to go, like, man, my mom's sick, or da, 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 da. I mean, we can't be fully in the embracement of the joyful moment because we're so worried about the other shoe to drop that we can't give ourselves that full embracement of joy and
Mm.
pleasure, right? That's just such a crazy thing to think about, right? We're so worried about, I mean, I guess evolutionary psychology, we got to know what's going to kill us, right? We'd rather know what's going to kill us. Like, I think I heard that happiness is an accidental byproduct of just our brain chemicals. So it's like, it's
Wow.
not supposed to happen. We're just supposed to know what kills us. And
Yeah.
happiness is just one of those things. It's like, oh, that happens when these things happen.
I'm not
right?
going to
Yeah.
die right now.
Right. It's such a strange thing, and there's a study I read recently, because I've been trying to, like, I do self experiments, right? I try not to buy too much into the optimization rhetoric that's out there, like everything should be optimized in life, because there's an argument out there, like, once auto tune and quantizing came into music, the soul went out of music. And I think that similarly can lay over life, right? If we optimize every part of life, we lose the soul of life,
Everybody
because
just needs to listen to Young Gun Silver Fox.
it's such a great band, such a great fucking band. But there's this idea that when we wake up in the morning, within the first hour, the highest point your dopamine spikes in that first hour is what your body's going to set the barometer at and chase the rest of the day. So if you,
Wow.
within that first hour, jump on your phone in whatever way and spike your
Damn.
dopamine to, like, 500 times of
Make
what it
sure you
normally
fucking
is.
talk about that.
Right. So, for myself, I wake up and I'm doing an Andrew Huberman thing right now, where I wake up and I do some bright light therapy for, like, within the first hour, I try to get 5 minutes of bright light. Right. So right now it's winter time in the Northwest, so we don't really have it. So I have to use a plant light. I take some licorice root and I meditate. Right. And so that basically gets my cortisol level up, gives me a dopamine spike to say, like, hey, you're awake. You got some things to do, but it doesn't, like, crash it all the way into, like, video game level, right? And so, but because of that, I allow myself now to step into these pleasureful moments and not be overwhelmed by them, but also not be turned off by them, right? Because it's not reaching the level of pleasure that I started my day out. I can look at my dog and be like, oh, you're fucking cool. Let's go hang out for a little bit. And I'm gonna look at you in the eyes and
Yeah.
sing you a song you'll never hear again, right? But but if I'm like, video game dopamine level, or scrolling dopamine level, I'll just pass my dog by and be like, hey, you're just a furry speed bump today.
Now I
Yeah.
have questions about those of us who like to self-pleasure in the morning.
It's great. No, so I don't think that's a natural dopamine spike. Same with sex,
Yeah.
right? There's a difference between sex and self pleasure.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
The way the body chemicals respond to it, but there's also a difference between self pleasure and jumping on a line, right? You're still.
Yeah.
I feel, and I don't have any science to back this, but I feel that you're showing yourself attention, love, camaraderie, friendship, all these things for yourself, so that you can show up for the rest of the people in your life.
Well, and going back to what Ian was sharing about being present with pleasure, I'll just speak personally. That practice for me is about being fully present with myself in the experience. And when I was listening to, what Ian was sharing, I was sitting in that concept, and it feels like a really simple way of talking about the disembodiment of who we are in our culture. that I'm living 30 seconds or 3 steps in front of my actual self. And so I'd love to hear, I want to hear your story. I want to know, like, how'd you get here? What made you start to like dive into the concepts of pleasure? And yeah, maybe even starting with like, what is pleasure to you? How do you define pleasure?
Yeah, there's a fun thing to play with as far as like early in the show, it could be like I'm literally teaching men how to masturbate right now.
Nice.
And so that's just like catchy, mind catching, that can go into story, that can go into all these things. But that's what I'm literally doing right now is teaching men how to self pleasure instead of habitually masturbate.
Yeah.
I love that. One of the
Yeah.
things that I think Aiwa, I think you're the one that, at least you're the person that I think of whenever this concept comes up.
I love that.
Is, having a woman take a mirror and looking at her vagina and just really understanding
Vulva, but yes.
but understanding like what your private parts are, not even private, right? But understanding yourself as a human. And so to me, when we talked about this earlier, Ian, that's one of the first things that came to mind. It's like, wow, that's very similar to this idea of just taking a mirror and looking at yourself unabashedly and being like, hey, that's my testicles. That's my shaft. That's my perineum, which people call a taint. Both fun words, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's beautiful. And actually, a really dear friend of mine, we've been talking about wanting to, this may be premature in the conversation, but we've been talking about wanting to do self-pleasure circles. And so what brought you to a place in your life that you, I would say, wanted to, and then had the idea and followed through with teaching men how to self-pleasure?
Well, it's definitely been heavily led by my own journey in men's personal development. So I grew up connected to the Mankind Project. My dad introduced me in the late 90s. And in men's work, it really became apparent to me that men were not talking about sexuality.
Yep.
That, from my dad's generation and men's work that was going on in the late 90s to now, just in the late 90s, it was great that men were talking about their emotions at all.
Right.
And going inward at all. Like that was a revelation. And some of the uncharted territories were there. And in particular, it was sexuality. It just kept showing, the way that it showed up for me is continually hearing men say, I've never told this to anyone in my life. And they'd always say that around sexuality. I've never told this to anyone in my life. And I was learning that, okay, unconscious behavior is usually linked to the things that we don't share with anyone because we're hiding it. We're suppressing it. We don't want anyone to know about it. And so I just like all these pieces were coming together in that, for one, men really care about sexuality. Hearing statistics around how much porn is viewed, either the amount of money it makes or the amount of hours that people watch it, the amount of people that go on porn sites per day is like insane numbers every year. It's more than Amazon, Netflix, Twitter combined.
What?
And it makes more money than the NHL, NFL, NBA, and MLB combined annually.
That's insane.
That's insane.
I actually had no idea.
It's huge. And so for me, instead of seeing that as a problem, it shined a light on me like men really care about sex. And they're not talking about it at all. And then I'm in my own experience as a man and my friends and how much we talk about sex and how much that is on my mind and navigating my life. I really started to see that sex was a huge topic to talk about in regards to men's personal development. And then, being on the path with yoga and my own introspection and meditation, doing Vipassana, silent meditation retreats, really bringing that together in my own sexuality of realizing being sober, being present, being with my breath, really the depth of the moment that I could be in with pleasure. That started with partners first, but then it started to move into my own experience. Like, okay, well, I'm having an intimate experience with a partner this way, but my self-pleasure is like this, like I need to step my game up.
Hmm.
And I was also in women's communities where it was predominantly women and they came from the orgasmic meditation background.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a stroking practice that was deep and they were doing deep personal work. And I was seeing a lot of tantrikas and just all this stuff with women expanding in their self-pleasure, but that wasn't there for the men.
Right.
So there was a lot of pieces that came together in me realizing that there's a huge problem going on for men in their relationship to their cock, and there is a lot of opportunity.
Mm.
Like there's a huge problem there, but there's a lot of opportunity for men to connect to themselves more, to gain confidence, to reconnect with their power in a good way, to get in alignment, to be in integrity. And now it's this creative life force that's propelling me out in the world.
Yeah.
So realizing that men and the way that they relate to masturbation really is a foundational piece for how they show up as men.
I was just about to ask you that. Do you see a correlation with men now that you've been working with them, finding ways to embrace sexual pleasure in ways that they don't have to feel dishonest or shameful? Do you see that men are actually able to embrace non-sexual pleasure in more, strategic ways or just embraceful ways? Now that they've kind of like gotten that shadow pleasure out of the way, like they've accepted that, and it's not shadow. I'm not saying it is, but
Yeah.
the overarching idea that like we shouldn't touch ourselves. Good boys don't touch themselves. Hands
It's
above the pants
sinful.
and shit, right? And all these just this rhetoric that we have. So do you see men like enjoying like a walk in the park once they find out a way that they can responsibly pleasure themselves without feeling shameful?
Well, I can really most of all reflect on my own life
Okay.
that and I see it like a staircase, a spiraling staircase that the more that I can be present in the way that I relate to pleasure in the bedroom completely correlates to how I feel in day-to-day life. And, it's always been spoken about as the creative life force energy.
Hmm.
And those are fun words and they point at something, but it's completely different to experience how the way that I relate to pleasure pipelines into the way that I'm creative.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most potent things on my journey was to look at where my weaknesses were and where my shadows were and where my insecurities were. And I was noticing that I was showing up more on the softer side, like more on the people pleaser side.
Hmm.
I wasn't on the hard side, like I'm just getting it for myself, which is its own shadow. The
Mm-hmm.
other shadow that isn't talked about enough, but it's starting to be talked about more, is like the softer side. Like, I just want to make you happy and do whatever you want to do, and I'm here for your pleasure. Like, there's just as much shadow in that
Right.
that isn't spoken to. And in my journey, it was reclaiming that I was like studying DOMs and like
Mm.
50 Shades of Grey.
Hmm.
And like, what does it make a man to be able to be like this?
I've had
And
so many
that,
clients come to me around the whole 50 Shades of Grey, either women wanting, what was his name?
Never read the books.
Alex Gray, I think.
Anyway, the
Yeah.
Christian.
Christian.
Yeah, I was like, his name was something sexy.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Christian.
what is it that makes that attractive, right? And so like as I'm listening to you, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I did. Like I want to hear about what's underneath all of that, right? Because what I hear you speaking of are the symptoms.
Hmm.
And so yeah, anyway, you're studying DOMs and 50 Shades of Grey. You can keep going, but I want to turn
Yeah.
back to that question of
Yeah,
what's
please.
under it.
Just connecting that to how these explorations that I have with pleasure and looking at my relationship to sexuality have a direct impact on how I'm showing up in life. So that confidence, that decisiveness, that clarity of my desire, those were the qualities I was seeing. These people know exactly what they want to an insane amount of detail, to the color of something, to the position, to the devices that are going to be used. It's like just this clarity and vision that I was like, wow, okay. How do I practice that? And simultaneously in all of this is when there's presence in that meditation aspect to pleasure, I'm also realizing that, wow, there's a lot more in life that can turn me on. and I can feel arousal from. And how do I bridge that gap between this thing that's been segmented in the bedroom as this one thing, but how do I feel more of that turn on in just vitality and aliveness in life that's very similar to the feeling of being in the bedroom and aroused in that way?
Yeah.
That's brought in a lot more pleasure into my life.
There's something that just came up while you were saying that, and it kind of goes to that, we were talking about earlier about not being able to fully embrace the emotional state that we're in. One of the things that it's a common societal joke, especially around men, that, when you're about to have sex, you start to think about baseball players and grandmothers, right? Because you don't want to come too soon or orgasm too soon. So like, it's such a dichotomy, right? So we finally get to the place of pleasure, the thing that we've been shaming ourselves of, and we finally get to an insertion point or some port of arousal. And then we're like, baseball players and my grandmother, baseball players. So we can't even like fully embrace the sex that we're about to have or the orgasm because we're like, I want to last long. I've got a thing. I've got to at least get 2 minutes, And so like we're distracting ourselves so much from the pleasure that we finally got to. So it's like, fuck, man. Like we're like unintentionally edging ourselves. Before we were even knew what edging was. And now we have a term called edging, and now people are edging for fucking days. And it's like, what do you do with that energy? That energy that just keeps building and building and building and then doesn't ever crest? Like, I'm sure there's a use for it, but like, goddamn, man. So yeah, it's just interesting as you say that. Like, I was just watching The Big C. It's a show from about 10 or 15 years ago. And one of the characters was having sex, and as soon as he got the condom out, he rolled over and looked at the camera and was like, grandmothers and baseball players, grandmothers and baseball players.
No way.
It's like, fuck, man.
Yeah. Oh, I even want to just like take a breath because I feel like this topic is so important for where we are in life and in the world. I have all sorts of ideas based off of like my own experience and my own studies and work. But I am really curious from your experience, where do you go with that? So if I'm a client and I come to you as a man, which I'm not, and I'm struggling to be present with pleasure, or I'm people pleasing, or maybe I feel in the other side of the shadow, right? I love that you're able to speak to that, right? The perpetual taker, the selfish one that, they're oblivious to the ways in which they are misaligned with themselves. And they come to you. Where do you start?
There's a term that comes from one of my favorite teachers, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it's objectification of behavior. So it's really starting to look with as much equanimity as possible, not judging good or bad, but just looking at what are my habits?
Yeah.
Who have I become in relationship to sexuality and pleasure? What is my unique way of connecting with it? Whether that's self-pleasure or with another. I really am passionate about focusing on a man in his relationship to sexuality. We can look at how he shows up in the bedroom with another person to collect data and see like pattern habits, and is he going into not good enoughs, what's happening there. But ultimately, it's the first piece is just really nerding out. I call it being an erotic scientist. That I'm just really taking notes and looking at, how do I masturbate? What is the porn that I watch? And then it goes, there's so many deeper layers. Like, what is my relationship to rejection? Where am I afraid that I'm not going to perform well enough? And it's just these little wormholes that go in so many different directions by looking at what is my relationship to sexuality. The relationship to sexuality is so much psychological and emotional that weaves its way into the somatics of how I, as a unique individual, am aroused. And for a lot of men, because it's been so taboo for so long in so many cultures, our relationship to sexuality was established hiding, in secret, trying to be quiet, trying not to be heard or seen. All of these things are sneaky, I'm doing something bad energy.
Right.
That from 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, from the very beginning, we don't know anything other than our experience. So my subconscious has correlated to shame, wrong, bad, hide, arousal.
Yep. And then know
And
what you're
that's
doing.
and then that's just like the foundation of men not having places to talk about it, not having communities talk about it. All the guys that talk about it, not all, predominantly are like locker room talk, like, oh my God, yeah, I got a blowjob. It was so good. And they're not like telling, oh my God, I was so terrified that I was going to come early and that I was going to go soft. And I was just worried that about the size of my cock and that she was going to, or they were going to judge it bad. Like that talk's not there. It's just the glazing
Braggadocious
over,
yep.
Yeah.
which is all the perfect recipe for performance anxiety, a lifetime of performance anxiety. So back to the question you started with, when a man first comes, it's looking at what the relationship is and starting to implement practices that bring in presence and a lot of expression. Expression is a huge part of it at the beginning because men have been like shooken up champagne bottles with a cork in them for so long, unable to talk. Most men don't hardly make any sound in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So much stimulation and intensity trapped in the body that like needs shaking out, verbalization. All that energy is just packed in the genitals. So it's that objectification of behavior to see where a man is and starting to move into expression so he can start to get that energy to actually flow.
Welcome, love. If you're feeling the pull to remember your power, soften your body, and return to your truth, I invite you into my world of healing arts and transformational coaching. I'm Aiua Wild, intuitive guide, energy medicine woman, and creator of Sensuous Revival Healing Arts. I help individuals and couples release old patterns, dissolve shame, reconnect with pleasure, and rise into a more liberated life. Through sacred pelvic healing, somatic practices, intuitive body talk, and emotional integration, you'll learn to listen to your body, trust your intuition, and create relationships that feel nourishing and aligned. Whether you work with me one-on-one, join a retreat, or step into my online program, you'll receive an experience of deep presence, compassionate guidance, and practices that create lasting change. If your soul is ready for more freedom, more pleasure, and deeper truth, I'm here. Learn more at sensuousrevival.com or reach out directly to begin your journey.
There's an interesting research going on right now with brain chemistry and we'll call it what it is, post-nut clarity, both men and women, right? But basically, once you've had an orgasm, what actually happens to the brain, right? And so some of the research, and this is not like, go hang your hat on this shit, but just some of the interesting research is they're finding a lot of similarities between the post-orgasmic brain, near-death experiences, and post-seizure brain. Right.
Wow.
And so there's this brain chemical called GABA, and GABA, what we're trying to figure out is it acts like a filtering device. So high levels of GABA mean you're really calm because you're filtering a lot of the unnatural world back into your spot, so you can actually understand the full breadth of what it is.
Whoa.
Lower levels of GABA are usually linked with anxiety, brain disorders, because the filter goes away and we're actually seeing a little bit more of like the raw nerve, right? But what they also find is GABA levels are really low after people have had near-death experiences, after people have had seizures, and people that are on hallucinogenics. So what they're thinking is that GABA levels lowers the filter so we can actually see and experience more of the trueness of the world, right? And so when we've had that orgasm, our GABA levels drop, theoretically, GABA levels drop, and we start to feel the true love and embracement of the actual world before our ego and everything starts to come back up and be like, don't forget you're Adam and you got kids and you got bills to pay and there's a woman next to you now. You got to deal with that. It's like, fuck, okay, shit, And so it's just so interesting because like a lot of people will use sex as creativity, to help induce creativities and all these things. There's a lot of like really interesting experimentation going on with why that actually happens.
Yeah, the Kinsey Institute. There's so many names that are popping up in my head. Like I'm so elated with the new research that's finally being prioritized. And I keep thinking, like, am I going to switch career paths? Because I would love to participate in the labs in doing both as as a lab rat and also as
Yeah.
the scientist. Because I, when I think about pleasure, you know, having an intentional relationship with the idea of eros, being a tantrika, knowing that everything that I experience from like the color green, right? Like I forget that the number, but there's more colors, more shades of the color green than there are anything else. And that
Ooh,
the way that we relate to it is essentially heart opening, which if you look at the chakra systems, it's the color green, right? So like
love that.
we can be in relationship to pleasure. And for me, what I recognize, and what this is kind of where some of the line of questioning that I had for you was coming from, was what's keeping me from it, right? Do I intentionally spend time with wanting to be in pleasure, right? And like Adam has shared, and we're biologically programmed to be focused on the problem, but those are coming from like the versions of ourselves as humans historically, where we did live in caves and we had to know that the sound of that twig snapping could mean death, right? Whereas like a twig snapping now is our fucking dog, you know, coming
Yeah,
closer. And so
seriously.
how do I build, I know what my practices look like, but I'm wondering from what you've gone through. Like I asked how you got here and you said men's work, but I'm like, no, no, no. How did Ian get to this work? Like what was going on in your life? Where did you learn to stop ignoring the twig snapping and look at the green to feel your
Mm,
heart expand and then
mm,
decide, wow, this has been so impactful in my life. I want to share it with other people.
mm. Wow. So much. I'm gonna go there, and I would love to, Adam, come back to the post nut clarity.
Please.
Yeah.
So remember that one.
Deal.
I very early on chose to become a lot more sober in my intimacy. So I grew up around partying. I was a skateboarder, I was a snowboarder, like on the
Hmm.
fringe, anti-society, anti 9 to 5, partying, doing all that. And very early on, I realized that in like intimacy and sexuality was something special. And so I think like part of the beginning of that journey was wanting to be sober in that experience and
Mm.
to be present. I can see things that go, multi-generational for me to have gotten me where I am too. Like, it's sometimes felt like a curse that I am obsessed with human relationship.
Mm. I
That's
can
just
relate.
something I see it in my father. My father just has it so strongly. And I think it's something that has been passed down to me is almost an obsession with relationship.
Mm.
And I've always been a little bit of a psychonaut and exploring psychedelics, exploring. I'm a nerd for the human experience. And there's something about sexuality that is the most expansive sober experience. It's
Amen.
like the everyday Joe Schmo can tap into this crazy portal that's just like blast off into the cosmos. And I imagine to a degree that I can't even fathom, there's also aspects of pain there too.
Yeah.
That's like attachment styles and my relationship with my mother and being born a C-section child. Like I have no idea how much of these things play into wanting to move from separation towards unity.
Mm.
And the experience of pleasure and sexuality really is the ultimate experience of unity, of joining together with something, human, with another human, our bodies literally join together.
Right.
And there's just, I've always, from the time I had my first partner and had sex for the first time, just long-term relationships or date. It was like long-term relationships and then going Buck Louie when I was single and just so much exploration and discovery. And then back into like a focused relationship where there was a lot of intimacy, a lot of sexuality, a lot of exploration. It's just been something. I'm actually writing a book about it. It's going to be titled Chasing the Heroine.
Oh my
I love
God.
that.
That's so many
And
relative in so many ways.
just this deep yearning and longing for that connection. And I've just been blessed and lucky that I've have all these pieces that have come together that let me be someone. Like, I'm a nerd for the experiences first and foremost, and then I just get to share with people what I'm learning as I'm nerding out on these things in my own journey.
I love that.
I think that's when I feel like we're on a path that makes sense, right? Because the information that we're learning is not only lighting us up, but it's lighting up the people around us, right? And it's not like you have to be the conduit for that information, but you know, like for me, if I know that other people are as excited about something that I am, then it feels like I'm doing something right. Like I'm in the right kind of portal. I'm in the right kind of path. It's like deja vu, like deja vu to me is like, oh, cool. I feel this because I feel like I'm doing this again in the right kind of way, right? So it's kind of nice to have those kind of moments to where you're like, oh shit, man, people are really jazzed about the shit I'm jazzed about. I feel like I'm doing something right now.
Yeah, it also reminds me, I forget his name. There's some really wickedly talented and wildly popular artist. And what I hear is that you are creating the art that makes your heart sing, and therefore people are coming to you that are also drawn to that same kind of art. It's funny when you said chasing the heroine. I have a book pending somewhere. It's been coming for many years, and the title's changed many, many times.
Yeah.
But recently I started thinking about the in-between. Like, I don't know if that's going to be the book title, but when we're talking about peak experiences, right, we're talking about these really high highs and then these really low lows, whether we're talking about the GABA or what have you. I want to focus on the in-between, right? Like, people are prone to show up when people are totally falling apart and at their lowest low. And then people are prone to show up when you're at your highest high and doing really well. But what about the in-between, right? Like, where is that relationship with myself, with other, in the in-between? And then squirrel note, when my husband and I got together, we were working with a relationship coach, and he asked us to give us a name of our relationship as this third entity.
Nice.
And we named it heroin.
Oh, right.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know that was a good thing, but and it was because during an experience of us making love afterwards, I said the closest thing that I've experienced to this sensation was the one time that I did heroin.
Wow.
And it's this, like, I can feel it just saying it, right? And so I know that it's not the heroin. I know that it's not my husband.
Yeah.
He's now my husband. He wasn't when I said that. It's this, it's going to bring tears to my eyes. It's this felt sense of being whole and one with my quote unquote self, which to me is God.
Yeah.
Which to me is the point of intimacy, right? Like this, like you said, these two bodies coming together as one. Like, if there isn't a way to define pleasure, like, I don't know, that feels like that's it for me. But yeah, I love the way that you phrase all of that too. Like, I'm such a nerd and such a same way. So after we finish recording the podcast, I will definitely want to get each other's contact info, because I'm like, I want to nerd out. But Adam, with his very organized brain over here, has some notes that we can tune back into. Otherwise, I'm going to keep pulling us into a multitude of directions, being the feminine.
Thank you.
Well, I think, just to kind of piggyback on what we've been talking about, and we, kind of touched on it in the beginning, but, not really defining pleasure. For me, pleasure, and I hate to use this analogy, but it's kind of like I can definitely like say things that are pleasurable, but for me, it's kind of like the Supreme Court's definition of pornography. Like I know it when I see it, which is the bullshit fucking definition. I'm not justifying theirs, but it's like pleasureful, right? Pleasure is pleasurable, and you know it when you feel it, right? Because sometimes there can be like for example, getting a tattoo is pleasurable to me. Right. And it's somebody carving on my skin for anywhere from an hour to 5 hours. That sucks. Right. And overall, there's blood, there's swelling, there's inflammation, there's like breathing exercises, but there's also endorphin rushes. And there's beautiful art that's being put on my body for a permanent amount of time now. Right. So I can find pleasure in that kind of, I guess, what some people would consider pain. But what I kind of see a lot of people doing is they really separate life pleasure and sexual pleasure. And it's almost like life pleasure is a thing that we can all enjoy, but sexual pleasure is something that I can never let anybody know about. Maybe not even my spouse, because you have the Madonna complex, right? Where you have a lot of guys that will fall madly in love with this woman. Let's say, separate sex marriages, right? They fall madly in love with this woman. Everything is for that person, but they fall so much in love with that woman, they can't have that person as a sexual partner anymore in the ways they want, because they purified that woman too much. They hold it to too much of a standard, right? You're the mother of my children. I can't come on your face. Like, things like that, right? And so they end up having extramarital affairs because not because they don't love that person, but because they can't physically, sexually do the things they want to, right? Yeah. And so so there's this idea of separating the ideas of pleasure when they should be all kind of encompassing, because like a pleasurable meal can lead to a pleasurable bottle of wine, which could lead to a pleasurable sexual experience, right? So those are all separate, but together they can be an amazing thing. So like in your practices that you're working with all these guys with, is there like a combination of like, hey, there doesn't need to be a separation of like, say, church and state, like sexual pleasure and your life pleasure can be one and the same, not walking around with your fucking cock out, but like still, you can appreciate, you could be stimulated by nature and then let that stimulation carry over into whatever bedroom you find yourself in, right?
Yeah. Wow. So much that you just brought there, in particularly around pleasure, because it's kind of an unknown. I don't know what pleasure feels like in your body. You don't really know what it feels like in mine.
Great.
And your perception of pleasure, this is the most profound teachings I've found on this is from Carolyn Elliott in Existential Kink. And what you talked about with the tattoo is like, some people like to be spanked really hard. Yep. Some people like hot burning things on them. Some people actually like to be cut. Like there's the amount of people there's the amount of fetishes that exist.
Totally.
True.
And why is it that someone getting spanked is extremely pleasurable for one person and then not for the other? And so pleasure really is this interesting, unique experience as this being in this body with this brain, navigating the world, and for some reason something feels good to me that may not feel good to another. And there's all this, and I can experience pleasure in ways that maybe I don't want to. Like the perfect example back to this is, I think a lot of men, their pleasure is integrated with shame. As soon as they have an orgasm, they spiral out in shame right away.
Yep.
Who's to say that isn't pleasurable?
Yeah,
who judges that them spiraling out in shame after they ejaculate isn't pleasurable? I don't know that anyone can say that.
Okay, really quick. I just read this yesterday. There is a rise in online gambling for people losing, wanting to lose, because that's the stimulant they find is shame. That's a missing stimulant. So there's a rise in people playing online gambling just to lose because that's the stimulant they want.
Well, they're addicted to the chemical,
on that, right?
Yeah.
And that's a complete fetish, is to humiliation. Humiliation is a huge fetish. To call me names, degrade me, put a cage on me. Yeah, like totally. You name it. So it's a very fascinating subject to talk about, like what is pleasurable and who makes the rules on it, and how do I know how pleasure feels in you compared to me. And part of it is back to that exploration and working with men wherever they are. Part of it is I can't just go to a guy and be like, you're enjoying that you're feeling shame after you ejaculate. Like, that's not going to help him at all.
Yeah.
Like, there's a process of just working with pleasure and working with the shame and seeing why it's there. And once again, starting to become aware of these unconscious cycles that are just playing out because they are so unconscious. They're just like on autopilot, repeat. But back to what you were saying, Adam, is that a huge aspect for me, and one of my favorite things, this really comes back to who I came on this planet, like the type of person I came on this planet as, is like, I want people to feel that pleasure and turn on outside of the bedroom.
Yeah.
And the more pleasure and joy they can feel outside of the bedroom, the more they'll feel in the bedroom. And a lot of people feel so miserable in their lives, it makes them so dependent upon the pleasure they feel in the bedroom, which is not an opening, potent turn on energy for, for me at least.
Right.
Well, and it's codependent. And that is for anybody who is, well, I'll just speak to myself or for myself. If I am in relationship with someone who is clinging to me for their pleasure, it doesn't feel good. It feels non-consensual because it's an unconscious contract that's trying to be played out. So in building capacity, which is what I hear, is building capacity for more pleasure in the in-between. Because when we're talking about people being in cages and being humiliated and that extreme, most people aren't in that world. But on the day-to-day level, you get stuck in traffic, right? You're feeling enraged and victimized by being stuck in traffic. That's exactly what existential kink speaks to, is like, how are the ways that I'm living my life day to day, collecting all of this evidence towards the idea that I'm a piece of shit, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not XYZ, fill in the blank, right?
Right.
Most of those things that I just said are beliefs that I've worked with around men. Women have differing beliefs, but it's the same experience.
Right.
It's like I'm walking around in the world essentially expecting to be shit on, spit on, told that I'm worthless, and I will find it because that's what my brain is programmed to seek.
Right.
And so when I am being held accountable, which I think this is where roles like coaches and counselors and guides and men's circles and women's circles are really, really beautiful, is that we start to be held accountable to this other way of existing. But it's brain training, right? Like, we have to learn how to detox and starve the addiction and the pathways to the things if we want, because that's the other thing, is like, do we want to stop doing that? Maybe I like the feeling of being humiliated.
Yeah.
I do still think that there's areas for growth, but it really is about the individual decision as to whether or not I want to let that go.
Totally. It's a deep philosophical discussion at that point of who am I to say what someone's journey is in their lifetime.
Yeah, never yuck anyone's yum.
Exactly.
Love that.
And with, in the world of pleasure, that's one of the reasons why I love navigating pleasure and sexuality, is that all of that is more apparent, for me at least. It's like more apparent. Why does existential kink and that philosophy use BDSM? Because it's so apparent that some people like pain. Like Adam talked about the tattoo, there's a lot of people that love pain. That's extremely pleasurable for them. Extreme amounts of pain. So it's just like there in my face that kind of shatters the perspectives of reality and pleasure that is held outside of the bedroom.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned something at one point during one of our conversations in the past about how, and I love this so much, I've referenced it so many times, but how pornography, for example, is like the junk food of pleasure, right? So it's like McDonald's, right? And that's such a beautiful statement, because, like, yes, I mean, people do live off McDonald's, right? I'm not saying that they don't. It's not the healthiest thing, but they can live off of it, right?
Yeah.
a lot of people, myself included, were introduced to porn at a very, very young age and lived off porn for a number of years and thought that was the expectation of it, right? And so we're being fed this junk food, right? This M&Ms and Skittles of fucking food when there's like a salad bar over there of pleasure that we just don't even realize is
Big
fucking
steak.
there, right? You know, there's like all this amazing accoutrements and fucking sides and dressings and shit that we can get into, but no, I'm
Yeah.
over here like just watching like staged
Pop
porn and
Cheetos.
bukkake and shit, right? You know?
Oh my God, we saw, but side note,
Huh?
my husband took a picture of it. He was at Crystal Mountain. There was a Subaru up there with a bumper sticker on it that said, "I love to be bukkakied."
No
Just
way.
fucking put it out there.
Wow. Anyway. Okay,
New
continue.
timeline.
So what would a health food option of pleasure be, or like a non-shadow version, right? Something that we could be proud of eating or attending, you know?
And what is required to move away from the junk food to the salad bar?
Right.
Back to, a piece of what you pointed out and we talked about earlier is to really look at, and this is the objectification of behavior and starting to really unpack that is looking early on, was I watching porn in secrecy and hiding, and was that just something that it got established early on for me? And am I just continuing that habit? I don't stand, there's a lot of people that, men's coaches that focus on sexuality and they stand on a pretty high soapbox, like porn across the board is bad and, are like really against it. And I see a lot of what they're pointing at, but for me, it's different for me, which is to look at what are the unintended impacts and from there making a choice. What are the unintended impacts of growing up on porn and, the junk food of sex? And then just that's in the same way shame can be hardwired in arousal. What are the things that are hardwired in my relationship to arousal because of porn? A huge thing about porn is I'm outsourcing my creativity, my arousal, my turn on. Most men, by the time they're in their early 20s, they don't have a relationship with sexuality that's actually based on sexual arousal. It's more based on mental craving.
Wow.
They've hardwired their arousal to be from the mind craving something because the mind learns over so many repetitions. I press play on this one website and this whole experience happens. It can become a soothing mechanism. It can be a mechanism of not feeling good enough. It can be a mechanism for feeling in control. It can be a mechanism for loneliness, for boredom. So many ways that porn can be a tool that the mind uses for craving something different than what it's experiencing. One of the biggest things that we're facing right now is younger and younger men not getting hard
Yeah,
in
it's so
intimate
sad.
experiences. And I love to reference, there's an actual term for it, which is spontaneous erection. That's like when we were teenagers and we just got boners for no reason.
Oh man.
And
Yeah.
now it's in the movies and they laugh at it and point and
Oh, you got good at like holding a book in front of or flipping your cock up so it's like in your belt or something. So
Yeah.
it's not like pointing at your neighbor. You know?
baggy
Oh, yeah.
shirts.
And
always.
all guys, like we can laugh at this, and there's something beautiful about that.
It's healthy.
That's the body being aroused,
Right.
having nothing to do with the mind. It's just blood flow, nervous system activation, arousal that then may lead the mind into sexuality as we start to have more of those experiences, but that's pure body arousal.
Yeah.
And where most men are today is on the complete opposite of the pendulum, which is they haven't related to complete body arousal for a long time. It's been the mind craving something, craving to get a hit, dopamine, all the chemicals that are released in orgasm and ejaculation. It's the back to the unintended impacts is a lot of men are having so many problems in the bedroom because they're hardwired from porn, which, think about it, we're watching and our mind is being programmed with what sexuality should be before our body ever gets to explore it.
Before they even know what sex is. I
Right.
mean, I have a young one and we talk pretty openly about things. And then I also have I have 3 kids. My middle one's 18 and she and I talk a lot, but with my boys, it's such a big conversation, and to be able to educate, like, I can tell them all day long, hey, this is what's going on with your brain. This is what's going on with your body. This is why it's important to do or not do said things. But it doesn't matter, because the culture and what they have access to anymore is like unavoidable. Like there is nothing that I can do that's going to determine whether or not my child has been exposed to porn before they even know their own relationship to their own sense of arousal. Like, it happens way too soon. And sadly, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot that we as parents can do anything about it.
Yeah. There's a theory that called the youth, inappropriately aptly named the youth bulge theory.
Oh.
So, yeah, right. And it's kind of funny because in a way, it can almost seem like the pornography is a good thing, right? But also, like, when you start to unpack it, you realize how detrimental it's been, right? But so the youth bulge theory is this idea that throughout time we can look back and look at when the male population, the youth male population, outweighed the youth female population. And when that happened, there was a lot of unrest. There were wars. There was looting and rioting, because you got all these men, these young men that have this misguided angst that don't know what to do with it, right? And so they're like, fuck, we got to go do shit. So we're going to go fight and fucking build shit and do stuff, right? And then conversely, when the female population, youth female population outweighed it, the guys all had shit to do because there are more women than guys. So we go fuck shit, right? And we can have orgasms and be passive, right? And so now the youth bulge theory, we've been in a time where the male population has far exceeded the female population, right? And as far as like statistics goes, not like doubling or anything, but as far as statistics goes, the youth male population has outnumbered the youth female population for a number of years. Yet we are not experiencing mass wars, mass outbursts, mass fucking riots, and all this shit. And one of the theories is because we have pornography now. We have wide use of video games, right? We have wide use of ways that we can access our dopamine to calm us down that doesn't require us to go out and exert a bunch of fucking energy, right?
Like, is it calming it down, or is it
Exactly.
teaching you to be fucking numb?
And that's exactly the argument, right? There's a two-sided camp to this, right? You know, but most people are out there saying, like, this is very alarming. It's good that we're not having the riots, but what are we doing in the long term for these guys, these young men, right? And then there's all these arguments from let's say straight women that are looking for a male partner, that are saying, like, the guys are too feminine now, or are too soft, and are too emotionally connected, or too emotional, period. Right. I've got a lot of women friends that will on paper say that they want a man that's in touch with their emotions, and then sideways they'll talk behind their hand, be like, but make sure he's tall and statuesque and has big shoulders, because I don't want a guy that cries. Right. You know, so it's like this double-edged sword of, we want these guys to show up as these, you know, emotionally available guys, but also they need to be able to kill something if it needs to happen. Right. And so, yeah, so there's like this youth bulge theory that is allowing pornography to kind of be a big mass sedative for the entire populace. Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, we don't know the long term effects of that, but that kind of goes into that junk food. We're all in this chemically induced tryptophan coma. Right. You know, where we're just like, we don't know what to do with our hands anymore. We're just like, I'm just going to sit around and play video games and masturbate, apparently.
It's fascinating, because when I work with men, when they make a declaration to stop watching porn, it usually causes a shitstorm in their life.
Yes, amen.
Because the porn has acted as a sedative, and they haven't had to face the things in work or in their relationship or whatever. They'll just like, oh, I'm just going to turn on a porn and yank one out real quick. You know, all of this is subconscious. Ejaculate, take a break for a moment. But it's like, yeah, getting rid of that sedative is going to bring things up. Similarly to if someone was on a prescription pill for a long time, if they got off of that, it's going to cause a bunch of shit to stir up as well.
Right.
And we would say that that's bad. In many cases, we would say that that's bad, but it's easy to see in the perspective of with porn that it's like, no, that's what needs to happen to get to the other side of what's there.
Right.
That's what the porn has been masking. And the thing that I'm learning from men that watch a lot of porn is they're actually not really connected to their clear desires. And they don't have the willpower to have a desire and really do whatever it takes to get there.
Right.
Because it's been that instant gratification, that like I don't really know my desire. I just go on a screen and it shows me all these genres, and then I something grabs my attention and I go there. Um,
You
yeah,
know,
there's
not
a
by no means an even comparison, but this just came to me, and it's such a frustrating thing that I'm dealing with, and it's just a me thing. It's a me thing, right? It might be frustrating to others, but it's a me thing, right? I can accept that. But I was talking to a kid the other day, right? This kid's probably like 17, 18. You know, we're talking about music. They're like, oh, what are you listening to? Oh, I listen to the classic hip hop's playlist on Spotify. Okay, cool. That's great. What songs you like? I don't know. I just listen to the playlist. What artists are on the playlist? I don't know. I just put the playlist on and listen to it, but I really like it. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're being entertained by genres of music and artists that you go back to repeatedly, but have no idea who they are, what genre they're actually in, if they're a band or an individual, if it's an AI group or, you know, and it doesn't matter, but it does, right? It's like, how do you not know where this, for me, music is such an inspiring, beautiful, like layer
Pleasurable.
of, yes, 100%. And I hear a song and I'm like, who was that? Oh my God, they were in that other band. I recognize that voice. I recognize that bass line. And I know we're all individual. We're all different, right? But just to me, like that, to what you were speaking to, that kind of like speaks to this, where like it doesn't matter, we're just entertained, we're pleasured, we're stimulated. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's just, it's there. Now I'm dealing with it, and when it's gone, I'll deal with it then, right? It's like, man, just think of how much more pleasurable it could be to be like, this is Nas and DJ Premier. This is their first track together from 1993. Like, get ready for the ride, because they've got like 30 other tracks now, right? But you know where it came from. You know the origin point, and you know where to go from there, right? It's kind of like you're talking about. Like, if I understand that I like a little pain in my life in a sexual way, then I can at least go into that and be like, hey, like, pinch me really hard and let's see where we go from there. Cool. Now I'm getting slapped in the face, right? But if I don't have that barometer to start with, then fuck, man, I could be getting poked with like a hot iron and be like, I don't know if I like that or not. It leaves a scar, right?
Yeah.
It's such an interesting dichotomy. And I guess the question that I'll have from that, just from what you're talking to, so when guys have this immense shame or misunderstanding about their stimulation or their arousal or their pleasure, what are some of the ways that you help them reframe that or actually contextualize it and be like, oh, so at least here's a starting point. Not everybody's blueprint's the same, but if these are the things you're ashamed of, maybe those are also starting points in what you actually really like, right? You know, so yeah. So what are some of the ways that you can help your clients reframe or just really expand that idea?
shame is so interesting because its superpower is in being hidden.
Ooh, I like
It's
that.
not that strong when it's brought to awareness.
Yeah.
And I had this in my own experience. I was working with a hypnotherapist, and I wanted to move through some limiting beliefs around not being good at this or that. It was so simple. He just would ask me, okay, like pretend I'm a jury. Convince me of how you're not good enough in these ways.
Ooh.
So I was like saying all these things to him, and he would just be repeating back, well, that's not evidence. That's just your opinion. That's not proof that you're not good enough at this or that or whatever.
Right.
So this is the thing with shame, is shame really exists in hiding. And when the stories are brought forward, or the beliefs or the perceptions are brought forward, they're a lot easier to be with, and they just kind of dismantle themselves through awareness. You know, there's also a side of shame, particularly when it comes to sexuality, that requires acceptance.
Hmm.
So, you know, what are some of the main shames men carry around sexuality? It's usually performance based at the surface,
Mm-hmm.
which is my dick's not big enough. I can't last long enough. I'm bad, I'm broken, I'm wrong,
Mm-hmm.
etc., etc. So first is just like bringing to awareness that I'm carrying those beliefs. Side note, the same nerdiness comes out of me for discovering shame. I I'm so happy when I find little remnants of shame that exist in me. I'm like going to find them. I want to find you little shame pieces and love you so much
Yep.
because I know you've existed because I haven't been present to care and speak to you. You know, something like someone feeling like they're not big enough. Let's say that's a shame. That's a shame that's harder in my opinion to just talk about and let dissipate because they're looking at their body and it may be from dysmorphia or they've got their own belief systems about it. In the realm of sexuality and shame, it is really inviting a man into where is he carrying that belief system from? That's the
Mm-hmm.
first piece. Like, where does that come from? Oh, well, I've watched porn with guys with 9-inch dicks my whole life. Okay, well, that makes sense. Like, that you're going to have a little bit of dysmorphia there for yourself. Oh, I can't last long enough. I'm not good enough. Okay, like, where does that come from? Oh, I was with someone, I didn't last very long, and they were mad at me or they made fun of me, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Shame is such a representation of being stuck in the past
Hmm.
and bringing it with us into, particularly the bedroom with shame. And why I'm such a nerd for this is because shame is such a burden that we carry on our own that
Right.
isn't spoken to. Particularly with sexuality, it's like when I'm not telling my stories, when I'm not telling these fears, when I'm not telling about these tough experiences I'm having, I'm just carrying this huge weight on my own. And then I'm bringing it into that experience every time. I've already got a pressurized chamber of anxiety and stress that I'm bringing into a brand new moment with a completely different person. So I'm setting myself up to experience that again. Shame also is one of the weakest states that we can be in.
Mm.
It's like it has the least amount of energy. And this is where it comes back to having regular pleasure practices and pleasure experiences is how can I start to have more experience with pleasure that doesn't have the shame story involved, that doesn't have the shame weight that I'm carrying. That the best, one of the best places to do that is in self-pleasure
Mm.
to navigate having more pleasurable experiences with less weight of shame on my shoulders. But ultimately, shame really is a release. For me, when I find shame still existing for myself, like I carry in me many layers of this is wrong, this is bad. When it's totally consensual, when it seems that we're both having a great time, there's nothing being wrong, bad, anything like that. Like there's at times where shame will come, I'll feel like a wave of shame in me that I've done something wrong.
Mm.
And sometimes I'll communicate like, hey, I just need to be with myself. Like will you be here? I'll ask, will you lay on me? Will you hold me? Whatever. And just be with it and discover what is the belief system there. Oh, I'm doing something bad. This is wrong. God's not going to approve of this. Whatever story is there. And I'll sometimes even go through a checklist of like, back to kind of Brene Brown. Is this true?
Hmm.
Yes.
Is this true that this is wrong, that this is bad, that I'm harming someone? Like,
Yeah.
no, I've communicated. I'm not lying. I'm not cheating on anyone. I'm in integrity. I'm having a good time. They seem to be having a good time. We're communicating well. Like, I'll kind of go through a little list that I can kind of give to this shameful part of me and be like, huh, maybe I'm not doing something wrong or bad here. Maybe this is really healthy and enjoyable. Okay. It really is a profound practice that I have in no way mastered, but I've come a long, long way with.
I love
That's
that.
that's why I like group work so much, particularly around shame, is when we sit in groups, right? Like you just demonstrated it beautifully before we went into this little segue. You talked about this is a me thing. And that is such a common thing for us to do as human beings, is be like, this is really just my issue. And it's not, right? Like anytime you speak about something that feels shameful into a group. I had like an insanely profound experience in a group of like 30 women when I admitted something that I felt ashamed of from my childhood. And it was where I was doing something that textbook was not okay. Like I can look back and be like, yep, that thing that I was doing was not okay. And why it wasn't okay was because it was harmful. So by sharing it and relieving that thing that I was carrying around like this giant fucking boulder, thank God for the facilitator that day. She said, I want you to look around the room right now. Well, before she had me open my eyes because I was inward. That was the only way that I could have the courage and the bravery to like say said thing out loud. She said, everybody in the room that has had a similar experience as this, please raise your hand. And then she said, I want you to open your eyes and look. And over half of, probably 70% of the women in the room had their hands raised. And there is something tremendously healing, even if the thing that I did was wrong.
Yeah.
To be able to understand like, oh, I did wrong. And the guilt and shame that I'm carrying from this, which I do want to make a differentiation between the two, is that I knew it was wrong. And therefore I was able to learn from it and therefore change my behavior. So in my understanding and what I practice is guilt is when I feel like I've done something wrong, and shame is when I believe that I am wrong. So like who I am at the core is wrong. And so what I hear you speaking to is that once you became present and aware of the shame within yourself, that you were able to respond with love and attention and presence. And through practice, which I love that you say, by no means have I mastered this, because like I totally get that. It's like, how can I respond? And what I heard as a woman sitting here was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful that you said, will you stay here with me? Will you lay with me? Will you lay on top of me? Will you hold me? And what that speaks to is that vulnerability that I hear Adam's people that he referred to as women saying, like, I want a sensitive man who's in touch with his feelings and emotionally available, but also big shoulders and, you know, blah, blah, blah. That strength that is required of you to be able to own what's going on for you and ask for help is the sexiest fucking thing. I want to get closer to the mic here so everybody can hear me. It is the sexiest thing, period. Like, please bring me your truth. Bring me your shame. Show me who you are and let me sit here with you. And as I don't remember if it was the last podcast we were recording, not everybody has capacity to sit with someone in their shame. And so be mindful of where you open yourself up. Because that, if you were to say to me, if we're in the middle of lovemaking and you needed to pause and I was just about to come and you need to pause because you're in your shame and you're like, oh, babe, I need you to sit with me right now. I might be a little fucking angry for a moment because I was in a different state. I was in a different place. But I will say it viscerally in this moment, if you were to grab my hand and look me in the eye and say, I really need you to be here with me, all of the anger that I would have felt would just flood right out of my body. And I would see you and I would see that this is what's needed. But that also, I'm just going to toot my own horn for the moment. I hope that that's true. I can imagine and fantasize about it right now. I've done a lot of work. And this is what is required of us to be able to get to that place, to be able to sit with each other in our shame and not take responsibility for it. Because that's probably more my knee-jerk reaction would to go, oh shit, what did I do wrong? Like what triggered your shame? I would blame myself for a minute and I might need to self-soothe and do my own practices to be able to sit with you in that. But the shame, bringing it into the light and sharing it with others so that we can see that it's just dust, you know, it's and it's beautiful and purposeful. I think that particularly in the wellness spaces, we can say that like guilt and shame are bad, and I think they're brilliant. I think they're here to teach us really beautiful things about ourselves if we're willing to listen.
Yeah. Shame, yeah, I'm really glad you brought in the guilt and shame difference because, guilt is such a potent teacher, which is I feel like this action is not something I should repeat. And shame is so interesting because it's like, where have I created a distorted belief about myself?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no evidence of shame. There is no evidence of wrongness, of being broken. There's stories of the most evil people spinning their life around and becoming saintly or kind or whatever. So where is it that I can justify that I'm some wrong being so much that I can slap it on my identity? And once again, back to shame being such a thing that it hides, and its power is in the places that we don't talk about things, because that's really where it can only exist. And that's why sexuality is my favorite subject, because that's where so much shame is hidden, because there's been so many stories for thousands of years in so many different religions and cultures of the wrongness of it, the badness of it, all the ways you shouldn't do it, and this tiny little segment of how you can do it, which doesn't really work for the majority of people anyways. Most people are outside of those lines.
Right.
So most people are, in those stories of some kind. And ultimately, these are the things that I have to face to expand into my pleasure.
Yeah.
Because that is my mind in the way of the experience. And the more that, this is the main thing, I think, for everyone, but, we're speaking a lot about men here, is just being too much in thoughts and mind and all these things up here, instead of being in this body where there's all this pleasure to be found, just tingling, energy shooting, heat, little this, like all these sensations, to just be like, oh my God, this feels so good. And it's just like, oh my God, I'm a piece of shit. I'm not going to last very long. My dick's not going to stay very hard. I'm not big enough. Like,
she's not enjoying herself, or they're not enjoying themselves.
No, just be there. Like, get out of there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I keep looking over at the pad and wanting to circle back to the nut clarity, or whatever it's called.
The post-nut clarity.
Post-nut clarity.
We kind of got away from that one.
Yeah. And part of why it's my curiosity is because I'm like, if you guys could just be present and nut more often and use that clarity, I want to hear like your perspective, because I'm like, what clarity are you getting post nut?
Well, I think, okay, I'll speak to what I feel is before Ian, but I think what it really kind of comes down to, it's like, the stories all go away. Like everything kind of just drains out for a moment. Like the narratives, the characters, the trying so hard, the masks we put on, it just all goes away, and you just find this like, hey, I'm just me. I'll be damned. Like I'm me. I'm here with this person next to me that we've just experienced something beautiful, right? Maybe I just experienced something beautiful and they just were there to cheer me on, whatever. But you have this moment, and it's like, I've heard the way that it's explained. It's like, this is the trueness of you, right? This isn't the character that you play. This isn't the idea of Adam. This is the pureness of Adam, like not the questioning Adam, the person that's like, hey, I chose Adam, the vessel of Adam, to be, that long-haired hippie guy. And so that's exactly who you are. And then as that tends to wear off or goes away, then the character of Adam starts to come back, right? The dad and the fucking householder and the career guy, whatever it is, right? And it's like, oh, that's right, I got bills to pay and I got a whiteboard to fill out and all this shit, right? But for that moment, everything is just the way it is, right? And so it's not chasing those moments, right? Because it's like one of you mentioned Vipassana earlier, Ian. So I'll use that as an example. So in the one of the ideas of Vipassana is you have a 10-day, roughly 10-day silent meditation, right? And one of the ideas behind that is the idea that not everybody can be a monk or a nun, right? So you have 10 days where you can have a monastic type of life where you know what it's like to give yourself to your great spirit, whatever that is. It could be God, it could be the land, it could be nature, whatever it is, right? But you have 10 days where you're not doing anything but focusing on your connection to something bigger than you, right? Now, again, not everybody can do that. So you get a little glimpse of what that feels like. Then you go back into the world. You can integrate that back into the world, into your life, into your things, right? Not everybody can go live in the Himalayas in a cave and just like give themselves to God and just pray for the world, right? And so that's what I kind of think about, like when there's these opportunities for this, post-nut clarity, epileptic, comebacks, NDEs, is we can actually see the true clarity of what we're able to do, right? And not the filters that we've had to put on or chose to put on to just live the life that we feel like we should be living. So I think there's like that dichotomy where you get these little glimpses and you're like, oh, damn, man, it's like dissonance and sound healing, right? The dissonance can break the pattern and show you what's behind the pattern, right? And so we sometimes just need to see what's behind that pattern. Right. So I think that's one of the things for like these examples for me, that's the way it kind of lands, is that you can try to see the true self and the mask that you've put on to be accepted in some kind of way. I don't know, Ian, I don't know if that lands with you or if you got a different way to look at that.
I've been really nerding out on this lately.
Love it.
And one of the things that's fascinating about ejaculation is it's one of the experiences that's similar to pregnancy in that the body will just take everything it needs from everywhere to refill the sperm.
Okay.
So it's just like,
Resourceful.
Whatever's needed, grab the building blocks. We've got to build sperm again. And it's so much, there's a lot of positive things that have come from semen retention and that teaching. But there's a lot of negativity that's been focused on the refractory period in a negative, weak way. I've heard crazy things on videos. Like there was this one woman, she's like, every time you ejaculate, you lose years of your life. And I'm like,
Jesus.
You're crazy.
Yeah.
And
then there's always somebody on the other side saying the exact opposite.
Totally. And for me, I was doing a lot of Joe Dispenza meditations and was going to his in-person events. And I just started to realize that after I ejaculated, my mind felt very similar to when I was deep in a meditative state. So it wasn't science telling me this. It was from my own experience of really feeling in an alpha brainwave state or deeper. And I know from Joe Dispenza meditations, like there's like a lot of setup that goes into really dropping into that deep state. So a good amount of time, a good of using focus, being skilled. And with an ejaculation, that's something that's pretty easy.
Right.
And so with an ejaculation, it especially when I pay attention to it and I have understanding, it's dropping me into this deep state. And what I've started to nerd out on is how that connects me to my subconscious mind. Because that's what we're doing in these types of meditations is we're slowing our brainwave frequency down so that we're not in that high beta brain where it's busier and less easy to kind of impact the subconscious mind. So for me, a lot of the times with ejaculation, that's when I drop into a meditative state. And in the same way, if I'm with a partner, I'm like, hey, I'm dropping in for a minute. Yeah. Like I'm going in to program some things into my mind. And for me, I am putting my attention in my heart. I'm putting connecting these different brains in my body. I'm repeating mantras about like how I'm connected, how I'm whole, how I am loved, how I am love, and just programming in these things that fulfill. So instead of my orgasm being what I think for a lot of men is just this short thing and then feeling shame and then picking the phone back up or, going back to the to-do list really quickly, for me, it's become this whole ritualistic thing that I'm very decisive and I choose when I ejaculate. And when I do, it's like this whole sacred ceremonial experience where, once again, just like coming together in a sacred sexual experience with another person is very, it has a lot to it. It's depth. There's depth there. It's a spiritual experience. There's something going on beyond what we can say in words. Same thing is I'm bringing that sacredness to ejaculation, where it's like it's like the Big Bang happening in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Love that.
I
The
love that you
thing,
differentiated. No, go. Sorry.
no, the thing that like the source of all creation, that same energy is happening in my body.
Yeah.
That's part of the masculine, the male body that's so profound is that action of ejaculation in that of life force energy moving in the way that it does. And really connecting to that and making it something that is for me to experience with myself in a deep way. Yes, sometimes there's another person there, and that's really beautiful that they're there with me. But I think there's also something amazing about intimacy that it's all happening within us. Who I'm with, everything they're feeling is happening inside of them. Yes, I'm there dancing with them, but it's all happening inside of them. And what's happening inside of me is they're happening inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah. What I was going to say is I love that you differentiated between orgasm and ejaculation. And then when you were talking about the post clarity for you and your experience, I saw two things. I saw what the when I was hearing post nut clarity and we were talking about how so many men immediately drop into guilt and shame, like that is the clarity. Like you're getting clear that you are carrying this and that is what needs to be worked on.
Ooh,
Yeah.
dang, I like that. Yeah.
And then as you've continued through your practice, that you have the ability to say, oh, this is me needing to drop in into ceremony, into prayer, into mantra, into reaffirming your truth. I have been part of this world for a long time, and there's so many slides out there that talk about the typical male withdrawal after coming
Totally.
in a relationship.
Totally.
And you just spoke so clearly to what that actually is providing as an opportunity to really reaffirm and if you don't have the spaciousness to reaffirm and you're coming up with the guilt and the shame, it's because it's giving you an opportunity to see this is what I need to be working on. And it gives the language, like this is, I'm nerding out because I'm like, yay, I have something else to like speak to in regards of like what that space can, like what the possibility or the potential of that space can be for people. Because I do know as a woman, I mean, it's been a long time since I've had a partner who I felt like quote unquote pulled away after.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, it's a visceral sensation in my body where like, yeah, I know what it's like to have somebody pull away in an intimate moment where I'm looking for deepening of that bond. And so to have the language and hear you say like, I'm going to drop in with myself here for a moment. Like that's so beautiful because what that does to my nervous system, that's still programmed towards anxious attachment, is it gives me clarity of what's happening so I can relax. And I do know that that's my responsibility. Like it's my responsibility to be able to relax and know that whatever you're doing over there in that moment, if you're quiet,
Right.
it's not about me.
Right.
That's probably one of my biggest lessons around intimacy is your reaction is not about me. But to have the language and to hear it being shared is such a beautiful gift to understand like, oh, okay, that's what could be possibly happening here instead of like the negative programming that says they're tired of me and I'm too much and blah, 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 right? Like I can give you all the feminine beliefs if you need them.
Back to an important piece here around shame and why sensuality and sexuality and intimacy is such a potent transformation because that is the place where we are going to face our biggest insecurities. My clothes are off. I'm here just in front of you. I can't wear any masks.
Yeah.
I'm showing you my totality. And I'm in this experience where there can be those parts of my brain that are still paying attention to the way you're behaving is a representation of who I am.
Yeah.
Like I'm still, the places that I'm still carrying that your pleasure is my responsibility and it represents my identity.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I peel those layers away, only then can I truthfully meet someone and be in this intimate divine dance where I know that I'm just a placeholder for you discovering the fucking cosmos in yourself. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing the same. But
Snaps
I
me.
can only be in the depth of that dance when I've peeled more and more layers away that I'm afraid that I'm not good enough and that who you are and what you're going through is a representation that I'm good enough. I
Mm.
have to make through the many layers of that to have that really cosmic experience that is, wow, all of this is happening inside of me with you,
Mm-hmm.
and all of this is happening in you with me.
Right.
That's beautiful. So, how do you? So, what do you recommend for people to start a self pleasure practice? You know, some easy things to just kind of get into, dip a toe in. You know, start to get an understanding of the amount of shame that one might be feeling. You know, so we can start to work
Yeah,
past that.
And I want to
yeah,
piggyback on that real quick. I know we're like rolling close into time, and I feel like we could keep going for days. We've
yeah,
talked a lot about men that come to you that maybe have an addiction to porn or kind of in that more intense shadow side of things. So, as you answer this question, I want to wrap in and bring in what about people or male identifying people who are numb, who maybe don't have a sense of arousal, who don't have a self pleasure practice, who aren't watching porn. Like,
Like an asexual, more or less
yeah,
approach. Okay.
somebody
Okay.
who's maybe dealing with some gray sexual
yeah.
relation to their self.
I think with all of it, it's about create like the first training I ever made was called the sexual reset training because I think every man needs a sexual reset. Whatever, at 18 years old, I wish every man could have a sexual reset and be like, all right, these are all the things that I learned in the world of unconsciousness when no one could really talk to me about this because I was a child, and that is like extremely dangerous to territory for anyone to navigate.
Hmm.
So, okay, I'm now an adult. I need a reset. And now I'm in my 20s, I need a reset. Now I'm in my 30s, I need a reset. It's ultimately looking at what are my habits and what are my, behaviors and questioning like, do I want something different? And ultimately, my encouragement for men and my continual stretch to practice into, which is more regular relationship to pleasure that doesn't always have to look the same way. It doesn't even mean that I have to get a hard on and stroke my hard on. It definitely doesn't mean that I have to get a hard on to the point of ejaculation.
Hmm.
But how can I create a more regular, routine relationship to pleasure that has to do with me and my body and sometimes, it being sexual, meaning involving my genitals. I'm nerding out more and more on like, how do I, I like to share with people to start doing testicle massages.
Hmm.
Do a testicle massage. Massage your perineum, massage this part of your body and don't need anything from it.
Yeah.
Men have been taught to be so extractive with our genitals that we only go there to take something from it.
Hmm.
How can I start to have a relationship of pleasure in my body that's giving,
Yeah.
that's nurturing, that's caring, but also finding the pleasure in it? And for me, my journey was very much numbness. Mine was a lot numbness. I drank a lot. My drug of choice was pain pills, living in my head a lot. So there's been a lot of numbness that I've navigated. And the more sober and present and regular my practices are with pleasure, the more back to life that I start to become. I feel subtler sensations. Energy shoots throughout my body. My hair stands up on my arms more. So for all men, wherever they are, I think the best thing to do is create a routine relationship with pleasure that doesn't have to have ejaculation. And even more of a stretch, doesn't even mean that you have to be hard all the time.
Yeah.
That's the thing that regularly is starting to help a man discover what he feels pleasurable outside of this teeny little box that he's been shown where to find pleasure.
Right.
Yeah. I love there's it's through the Erotic Freedom Club, which is from Jaya and Ian, who created the erotic blueprints. But in that community, when you gather, the first thing that they do when they open the container is a pleasure first practice. And so they walk you through each blueprint of the erotic blueprints. And so, you know, they tell you you can turn your cameras off. You know, there's like sometimes a ton of us on Zoom, but you can, like, through the sensual blueprint, just like tracing your fingers over your skin, and it can be your forehead, but it also can be your labia or your testicles. Like, it can be your forearm, like really expanding. And I wanted to speak to this too, because I know it comes up for a lot of men around like size and function and whether or not they're staying hard. I want to tell anybody who listens, you have other parts of your body that provide lots of pleasure other than your cock. So if
Totally.
the cock, if you're getting in your head and your cock is starting to represent what's going on and you're not wanting to abandon said exercises, like, first, of course, take care of yourself. Don't just like try to override. I'm not saying that, but like, other parts of your body can still continue the job very, very well, and sometimes even better. So, but like understanding that pleasure, like I love exploring erogenous zones, right? Like the creases of the elbow or behind the knees, the inside of the ankle. Like these are different ways to be able to go beyond the PIV basic, you know, like sexual blueprint, which is like, I need to stick this thing inside that hole and rub it back and forth in a certain pace. It's like, no, like, one of the things that I really love, and is most people are like, oh, I never thought about that, is called breath massage. Breath, not breast.
Yeah, yeah.
Although you can use the breath
Yeah.
on the breast. And
Yeah.
that's really hot. But changing the way you breathe on your partner and allowing the temperature change or the pressure change or where it's moving, right? Like to get outside of these really small boxes that we adopted through all of the, you know, indoctrinations of porn. As I'm listening to this, I'm like, I'm so glad that we were poor and I had no internet. Like for so long, porn was not my thing. You know, I'm with you. I'm super aligned with the idea that like porn is not the demon. I don't think that it's necessarily the best tool, but I also don't believe in demonizing anything.
Right.
And, you know, there's a side of porn that's really not supportive of where we're all going in this conversation. But yeah, just helping us as individuals take a breath, take a beat, and recognize like we don't have to be stuck in this moment and limited by the ideas in which we think that we should be doing X, Y, or Z with X, Y, or Z.
One of my other favorites is coming to mind is to like allocate the shower for this. Like the shower can be the place that it's like, all right, mind, I don't need you. It's not to-do list time. It's not brain functionality time. It's time to be with my body in the water, rubbing the soap on here, feeling good. Like that's a great place to just really start to be like, how can I bring more pleasure to my shower? That can mean sexual energy and getting aroused in that way, but it doesn't have to either. It's like really starting to expand upon this human experience and me feeling more pleasure outside of the lines of what we've been told it can only be.
You know, it comes Herbal Essences commercial comes to mind.
Yeah.
And you know,
it
it's so funny.
sold so much fucking shampoo.
Well, and to their credit, like it just, and this is all hindsight, like looking back now, like I love washing my hair, you know, and I do have long hair, you know, but I give myself a scalp massage, a shampoo condition, all that shit. Whereas before it was just a thing. It was just like rub, get it out, and then I'm done, right? And shower and towel off. You know, so to your point, like these ideas of like this like non-sexual self-pleasure, just appreciating where you're at and what you're doing at that moment, right? From as menial as the email that I have to send after this podcast is done, I need to take as much time with that to make sure that I get my point across, as much as I need to make sure my hair is properly clean, right? And that there's a pleasure that can be taken in that, right? It doesn't have to be like balloons and streamers pleasure or orgasmic pleasure, but I can take pleasure in the fact that I know that I just communicated the best way that I can. I don't have to ask more questions later or answer more, repeat myself. There's a pleasure in that too, right?
I want balloons and streamers to fly off every time I orgasm, please.
Please, let's do it. Yeah.
Just have one of those like little pull.
Yes, but it's going to come with a creepy clown.
Oh.
As soon as you orgasm, the clown pops up. Pennywise is going to pop up and be like, "Here's your balloons and your streamers."
Okay, maybe I take it back.
Oh man, Ian, I love you, brother. So, I like Aiua said, we could talk forever, but as we start wrapping up, like where can people go to talk to you, learn more about what you're doing, some of the verbiage that you're using, some of the ideas you're talking about?
Yeah, the main place where I'm pumping things is on Instagram. It's seeding, like seeds you put in the ground, seeding masculinity, which is a play on our sperm and blossoming, sprouting masculinity. And that's what I'm on TikTok and YouTube. It's all under that same one. And yeah, if anyone's interested in events, I put on events where teachers come in and guide men into self-pleasure. Those are some of the events I'm putting on. And I'm also putting on an event called Naked Truth, which is desexualizing nudity. All of that, they can reach me there.
Awesome. Where are you in the world?
Whidbey Island, Washington.
Oh, you are. I think Adam did tell me. I think I asked that.
Yeah, ferry right away.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so you primarily only work with men. Is that what I'm gathering?
Right now, I'm putting my focus on men, but I used to only work with women, and I definitely it's on the edge to be bringing that back in, but life said that I needed to focus this way for a bit. But I love working with couples and I love working with everyone.
Yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ian. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Look forward to having you back, man. Thank you for listening. Remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you're listening to. And if you found this episode helpful, please comment or share it with a friend. Check out the show notes for links to get in touch with myself, Aiua, or our guest. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. This episode was recorded, edited, and produced by Adam Reel.